back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Keys to Digital Transformation in Government, sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today, John Owens, the Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, George Chambers, the Executive Director of the Office of IT Infrastructure Operations at the Department of Health and Human Services, Bill Zielinski, the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for the IT Category Management in the Federal Acquisition Service at the General Services Administration, and Gary Lebovich, the Executive Vice President at Booz Allen Hamilton. Last segment, we talked a lot about the culture change that needs to happen, both workforce, ensuring that we get in tune with the customer, internal customers, external customers. Let's go the next level down and talk actually how do you do Agile, how do you do DevOps? And I know that there's no one way to do it, which is part of the beauty of this, but you need automation, that's a key piece, orchestration's a key piece. So let me start with John. You guys have been kind of the longest in this realm. Talk a little bit about how you guys are adding these pieces and parts together.
So certainly we started with the education on Agile and a couple of volunteer teams to start acting in a different way, changing that culture. But eventually, if you really want to move toward that DevOps, that full link between development and operations, you have to build some foundational technologies. And you've touched on those: automated build, automated test, automated deployment, and then of course the blue-green environment type of methodology that I talked about earlier. So that took a bunch of technology and a switch in culture as well. We used to all hand jam tests. You know, you put a bunch of people down in front of it, you start clicking buttons, and then when you realize that you can't run that 24/7, you have to invest in an automated build system to take the product out of source several times a day, build it, put it into automated test, run test scripts, keep track of what your code coverage is to make sure it's above 80–85% in the areas that you can test through automation. And then of course, automated deployment. The blue-green scenario I talked about earlier is literally having an environment that you can switch into production and then move out of production. So your green is in production, your blue is staging, you build, automate, test, deploy. Now blue is ready to go, you switch it to the green environment, green becomes blue, and you're live. And it happens in a matter of seconds. And if something goes wrong, you can switch back. And that's of course a methodology and a culture that has existed in industry for many years, and many big organizations that offer 24/7 availability of their products and services have been using, and one we at the USPTO are starting to embrace. But then of course you hit hiccups. But that foundational technology, that change in what you build, how you build it, how you test, is all foundational to get a good transition between Agile and DevOps for a full operational capability that allows you to put in a patch for something within 24 hours of discovery. Without it, it's not possible.
And then you have the cybersecurity piece too. Have you gone down that path yet?
Yep. Our cybersecurity piece is one of the most difficult things in an ever-changing environment to overcome, and it takes good standards and practices and a direct integration of that team with your CISO right at the helm of it, ready to go, looking at everything as it's changing. Also separating your security at multiple layers. So you do the base operating system on down to the hardware and so on at one layer, and then you have your software at another, and then your final scans when you release the product. All of which has to be done before you flip, and has to be done quickly. And that causes changes in not only our culture and methodology, but also our contracts. Cannot tell you the number of times we've done emergency deployments that needed full security scans on every one of them, so of course automated, but then a secondary scan once it's ready to go to make sure that you didn't do anything that you shouldn't, to keep all your documentation up to date, which, trust me, the IG is going to look for.
I was about to say we could talk all day about the IG culture change too, which we didn't really get to in the last segment. Gary, you guys also are seeing this similar need for automation as you guys work with agencies. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
So one of the things we do is when we first come to an agency is we have a DevOps maturity assessment that we do for a lot of agencies. It's trying to understand what is manual today, what's automated, what could possibly be automated, what does the underlying technical architecture look like, what kind of packages and platforms is the agency using today. And then what we have is what we call an auto-deployable DevOps process. And what that really means is we try to stitch together a series of scripts scripts so that we can link together all of the technology so that we have a seamless DevOps process. As John explained, there's a lot of complexity to this. You're really bringing together a lot of different technologies to achieve that end-to-end integration. And what we try to do for our customers is to make it a little bit easier by automating that process and writing a series of scripts so that it can be easily implementable. It's very well documented, to John's point. It includes the security considerations, which are paramount for a lot of agencies. And I don't want to make it sound like it's hit a button, but it's about as close to hit a button as you can so that you achieve the kind of objectives you're looking for.
And in many ways, what this is doing is taking, it's even better than the 80-20 rule, right? Where it's doing about 80% of the work and then 20% is done by the people side. It's probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, 90, 95% or more. And you just have experts who are looking at the results and going, okay, are there any holes?
That's exactly right. So along this whole process, as you're working through, the human factor is just looking at results, making minor adjustments. It's not moving in and out of packages, not replacing things. This whole process is automated such that if you see something that's different, you say, okay, well, we don't want to use Splunk. I think we ought to use something else. As long as it's part of the technical architecture, it's easily replaceable through a change in the script, and the agency moves on. So it's been highly effective.
Bill, you're shaking your head. It's interesting, for Bill's background, if you don't know, Bill used to be a CIO. So you bring your CIO hat on. I mean, this sounds perfect, if you will, in many ways. Talk a little bit about what you're kind of hearing and how it relates back to kind of the broader picture.
Sure. So Jason, we have a lot of folks who they have that sense of urgency towards modernization, want to modernize, and they know and understand the risks that are there today. And John used this term kind of foundational. Gary used the term kind of organizational maturity assessment. We see a lot of folks who are coming to us saying, I want to buy some cloud, I want to buy some Agile, I want to buy some as a service, and the sticky spot we sometimes find ourselves in is you want to satisfy the requirement that your customers are bringing to you, but you also know and understand and realize that it's not something that you buy and deploy. This really is a fundamental change to how you're approaching your work, how you're taking a look at the mission, kind of the mission space and the deployment of your capabilities within your business, and really having an understanding of where you sit today versus where you want to get to, what things may be missing, and starting to establish that foundation that allows you to do that. So for us, we do spend a lot of time with agencies saying, hey, you could benefit from our experience, from what we've seen from other agencies. We can help you make those connections to others who have gone before you. And while we want to satisfy your requirement, we also don't want to do so in a way that we believe is just simply buying you some of the same issues, but a little bit further down the road. And I think that idea of these things, Agile, cloud, as a service, is not something you simply buy and deploy.
Yeah, Bill,
George.
Thank you. Bill, you're spot on. And it goes back to what Gary was saying. We look forward to pressing the button. But we don't want to be out in front of the headlights either. And we have foundational, and we use that, but there are standards of technology in a very heterogeneous environment, which, our federated organization of HHS, it's highly complex. And without those fundamental building blocks, you can't really implement a fully automated capability from dev to ops when you have operating environments that are so disparate and so different. So, going back to the basics, in architecture and trying to come up with those standard shared services and their standard capabilities and how you interoperate with an enterprise service methodology or some architecture along those lines are where our investments are right now, so we can get to the next level investments.
In fact, as soon as Bill started talking about understanding your mission space, understand where you're going, all I could think of is the to be, right? And I was going to turn to you, George, and say, well, George is our architecture person on the panel, but you answered my question, so thank you. You made my life easy. Let me turn back to John for a second. Challenges, potholes, roadblocks, whatever you want to call them. What have you guys seen over the last 6-7 years, and what have you done to overcome them?
It's, I think the biggest challenge, and George and Bill kind of touched on this, it's moving everything along at a proper pace where the culture adapts at the same time the technology adapts, and not one of those getting ahead of themselves. I know when we introduced user-centered design and we hired some people to come in and do user-centered design, that was like a big change. But that was a foundational product. The technology, the tech stack, the cloud, that's a foundational product. You can go too far with any one of these. You can change them too much, in my opinion. And then if one piece of this gets ahead of yourself, you really see a disruption down the line. So what you want is a nice steady pace of cultural change, technology change, with a nice strong continuous investment. Really that continuity is very important to move the stakes slowly forward every year, year over year, and then highlight your victories and learn from your defeats. So you highlight when you shut something off, you roll it off the floor, you buy a cake from Costco, you know, you celebrate with your friends, not with federal funds, by the way. You know, you just, you know, you do that, you keep people engaged, you keep people happy, it brings the naysayers on board, you move that progress forward, and at the same time, you sit back and you look at those failures and you say to yourself, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? You don't call out somebody for it, you don't flog somebody for it, but you move generally forward and you say, we're not going to do that again. Let's fix our customer, let's fix our team, our culture. Maybe we chose a wrong piece of technology, God knows that's happened to me before. And we'll just, okay, we'll fix it, right? It's never too late to do the right thing. We'll just keep continuously moving forward. So keeping that all at pace is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned.
Let me put the shoe on the other foot for Gary. Gary, you have a customer who says, let's move faster, let's do it, come on, we gotta get out, we gotta get it done.
Right.
How do you, if you will, slow them down a little
Right.
bit?
No, it's a great point. John raises a really great point. It's in our best interest to work with the client in a manner that's they're comfortable in. We don't win if the client doesn't win. It's not our objective to throw all this new crazy technology at them. You know, I've been in this business 30 years. I started out punching cards and working on a mainframe, and I've never been in a period of time in this business where there are so many alternatives, so many options, so many changes in technology. I mean, if you're a fan of technology, it's like you're like a kid in a Play Store right now. There's so many things you can do. Having said that, it's a lot of cases, it's the wrong way to go right now. Some agencies are just slowly adjusting. They need some time, the cultural change, but even the technology changes. While they sound wonderful, they're not for everybody. And so our job is to really educate and go, like John said, in partnership with our clients, demonstrating what's possible, but sometimes saying this is possible, but you're just not ready right now. And let us work with you to get you ready so that you can take advantage of what's available.
And I think understanding what's available is one of the hardest things. I mean, Bill, you probably see that, as you said, people come in and go, I want to buy as a service, or I want to buy that cloud thing. What do you do? Like, what should people understand as we kind of wrap up this panel and this discussion? What should people keep in mind as they move into this digital transformation world using Agile, DevOps, and other buzzwords?
So Jason, what I say is they shouldn't be trying to do this on their own, right? This is a wonderful opportunity. When you take a look at the government-wide kind of landscape, I'm not saying it's one size fits all. Everybody's coming from a different place in a different space with different missions. However, when you talk about the challenges that they're facing, they're all very similar. And what we're trying to do with IT category management is to really draw that community together, right? So we want folks to participate. If you have expertise and a higher level of maturity in one area, lend that to the group. If you're looking for some answers, come participate in these groups, because we can do this in a much more effective and efficient way by joining that power of the crowd together. And in so doing, we're also bringing industry to the table as well. So there are opportunities through these initiatives, working with Office of Management and Budget, to really help agencies accelerate their planning and move themselves forward. So come to the table.
All right, George, tell us what you think is a good takeaway. What should people keep in mind as they kind of move into the Agile world?
I see it as great opportunity. Having to hear what other agencies are doing sets the standard for the rest of us. I having come to the federal government from private industry, I'm not willing to accept the pace of the government versus what we can do in private industry. I don't believe that we should be watering down or diluting our expectations. And so the whole idea of creating those building blocks and get your investments and get them in quickly so then you can enable your stakeholders, those that, the groups that I support have a mission, and that's an important mission, and they have to be enabled. And so what Bill's doing on the GSA side is important, because it allows us through an acquisition process to start leveraging those technologies, bring them in quickly, and let's move out. So I guess the message is you've got to be sensitive to time, but you can't let it be your excuse. And I think that's what I've picked up. So thank you.
Very nice. All right, Gary, you're going to get the last word.
You know, from where I sit, I would encourage all colleagues here in government, take advantage of the experiences that are out there. You know, you can learn, as John said, a lot from those that don't work as well as those that do. We've seen our share of failures, and like our colleagues here, we learn a lot from that. We really understand what didn't go right, whether it was a technology issue or a cultural issue. We have worked across all agencies, both on the defense side, the civilian side, and everybody's a little different. There's no one-size-fits-all here. And so making sure that you as an agency, when you get started on this, understand the pros and cons, that you've evaluated the options, that you have both your client side and your contract side ready for what's going to be a pretty dramatic change in how you do business. A lot of times we forget about the contract side, and a lot of times we spend a lot of time educating the contractual folks about what this is going to be, what it's not going to be. Here's what's going to be different. Here's how we need to be evaluated. Here's why we suggest things you think about. When we get to issues like service level agreements, it's a very different game when you're in a DevOps model than you're in the old traditional model. So that whole education process, I can't encourage enough for all agencies to take part of and leverage the experiences, obviously, of firms like ours and others who are doing this day to day with many, many agencies, because we see a lot, we learn a lot, and we have a lot to share.
Very good. Great advice. That's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Keys to Digital Transformation in Government, sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I've been your host, Jason Miller. I'd like to thank my guests. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and search IT modernization.
On behalf of Booz Allen, thank you for joining us. A link to the archive session will be sent to you shortly. If you requested a training certificate, you will also receive an email with download instructions after the webinar. This concludes our discussion. Thank you.